hide my, there we go. Okay, guys, what's up? Thanks for joining. I thought I'd just do this. I feel like it's a great thing for our generation to start thinking about real estate, right? Thinking about getting into your first investment. I think that a lot of us at a younger age might think that buying a house is like really hard because we talked to our parents, our grandparents, and they were buying houses for like $40,000 back in the day. And now stuff's like way more expensive, right? So I kind of want to like change your mind a bit, and give you a better idea on how to purchase a property at a younger age. And so yeah, hopefully this can help you guys out a bit. So yeah, this is my guide to your first investment property. Uh, yeah, so let's get started a bit here. Um, Most of you guys know me already. I feel like all you guys do. Some of you longtime bros, and some of you I just met literally today. So shout out to you guys. Um, anyway, I'm a real estate agent in Ashland. I'm also an accredited buyer's representative. So I've went through extensive months of training to get awarded an ABR designation. So I know how to represent buyers and especially investment clients who are looking to invest their money within real estate. I've been licensed for over 3 years now, getting close to 4 years. I sold over $16 million worth of real estate by 22nd birthday. And I currently own two rental units in the Rogue Valley here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Those pictures on the side there are a couple of the homes I've sold recently in Ashland. Really pretty homes. By the way, guys, at the end, we're going to do like a Q&A stuff. So if you guys have any questions and stuff, we'll probably just wait to the end, just write them down. Um, and I'll answer them at the end there. All right. So, step number one is going to be finances and credit. Throw up a little hand raise in the chat if you have established credit. Okay. Okay, good. A couple of you guys, most of you guys. Gabe raised his hand. Shout out to you, Gabe. Okay, so if you don't have a credit card right now, I want you to get one tonight because you should be you should be establishing credit at a young age. It's not very hard, right? You can go online right now, um, apply for a credit card. I recommend Discover as a good credit union. Or you can go through Apple. You can go on your phone right now, go to Wallet and hit apply for an Apple card, and they'll send you a credit card pretty much right away. So if you guys don't have a credit card, you got to get on that and start building your credit. Okay. So we're going to talk about lenders. So in order to buy a house, you're going to need to get a loan. Unless you guys are, rolling in the dough and have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're probably going to need to get a loan for the house. Okay. So a couple of companies that I work with personally, Guild Mortgage. So this is a mortgage company. Okay. This is kind of like a third party mortgage broker, right? So you could be like a real estate agent working for a company. There's going to be quite a bit of lenders working for mortgage companies. Okay. So one option is going to be a mortgage company to get your loan through. Second option is going to be like a credit union. Okay. So this could be a local one. The Rogue is one of our local credit unions that a lot of people bank with. Okay. Um, they're happy to give you loans. They're happy to, sit down with you, go through your finances and credit, and give you a loan. And then there's like the bigger companies like Chase, Wells Fargo. Uh, I've seen ads for Rocket Mortgage, a lot of those ads. These are like big companies that offer mortgages. This is another option. I wouldn't say they're the greatest, but companies like Chase are pretty dang good with clients and are very personable. Um, so you guys are probably wondering, what do lenders and banks look at? When you go sit down with a lender and you're like, okay, I'm looking to get a mortgage. These are the things that they're going to look at when you sit down with them. So, number one, credit history. All right. A lot of you guys have already established a credit card. You may be paying a car payment. You may be paying student loans, something on your credit that shows that you know how to pay back the bank. Okay. And if you guys don't have a credit card and you apply for one tonight, which I hope you do, literally just put your gym membership, right, on your credit card. What is that? $40 a month. You set up automatic payments. Every single month, you get charged $40 and you pay it off every month. You do that, for a year, you're going to have good established credit that banks will look at. They're obviously going to like the people who have had longer, established credit for a couple of years. They're definitely going to favor that borrower quite a bit more. Um, Another thing they're going to look at, right, is income and employment. So, so they usually want to see 2 years of income at a current or similar employer. So that could be, you have a W-2 job that's paying you, every month for 2 years. That's going to be sufficient. Say you've been working at a W-2 for a year and you switch to a 1099. So you go from being an employee to self-employed. Lenders don't typically like that because it's a change of income and employer. It shows that you might be, less of a solid buyer, solid borrower because you're moving around so much, if that makes sense. Um, right, they're going to be looking at your bank statements. What you've been, your spending categories, how much money you're spending, your debt to income ratio. So debt to income is basically how much money goes in your account each month and how much money leaves it. Right. So if you're making, $4,000 a month and you're only spending, 1,500, that's great. If you're spending closer to 3,500, you only have a couple $100 left over each month in your account. Lenders won't like to see that. That means you're spending like most of the money you get. Okay. Um, they're also going to be looking at savings. So how much money you have in your savings account. Okay. So those are kind of the typical things lenders are going to look at when you sit down with them and apply for a mortgage. Okay. So this is going to be a pretty common question, I think, for us is what if I don't have established income or credit? Okay. I think this is going to be a pretty popular question for our age because I think a lot of you guys are still in school, and may have not been working full time for very long. Maybe you guys have part-time jobs. But this is a pretty common question and one that you'll probably run into when you're applying for a loan. Okay, so the solution to this, well, number one, hopefully, you guys, have had credit established for a couple years. You've been paying off your credit card every month. You haven't been maxing it out and skipping months on payments. Um, so, so say you find an investment property, which we're going to go over how to find a good one in a little bit. But say you find a suitable investment property that, you've run the numbers extensively, the rents make sense, you think the property is going to make you money over time. Okay. And once you're pretty solid on that idea, you can ask someone to co-sign for you. Okay. So if you find a good property and you have some savings in your account, but the lender's like, sorry, you haven't been working for very long at your current employer. Your credit's not good enough. I can't give you the loan. So what you can do is co-sign with somebody on this loan. So if you guys have, parents, maybe siblings, aunts and uncles, mentors, really, anyone who you're very close with, could be an option for a cosign. And they can basically cosign on the loan. And if you miss your payments and default on the mortgage, they will then uh, gain ownership of the property. So does that make sense for a lot of people? Some thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So if you guys have questions about that, just write it down. We'll get to it. But some of this, may be a little bit more confusing for people. But yeah, cosign. People do it all the time, right? You buy a car at the car dealership. Um, you don't have established credit. Your parent says, "Yeah, I'll co-sign on it. If you don't make your payments, I get the brand new car," right? So, so that's, a very similar thing. Um, okay, so this is another question. How many people were thinking about this question right here? How much money do you need? Yeah, there's a lot of people thinking about that. How much money do I need to buy a house? Oh yeah, so that's a good question. Um, the answer to that is it depends. It really depends. You could technically buy a house with zero dollars. Um, but that's not always the best way, and not a lot of people have that opportunity. So we're gonna go the more conventional route. The majority of borrowers need about this much money. So there are a few different ways to finance a house. Okay. You can get a conventional loan from the bank, like the bank and the lenders we talked about. You can get an FHA loan. FHA loans are pretty popular amongst Gen Zs. Have people heard about those FHA loans before on Instagram and stuff? No. So FHA means Federal Housing Administration Loan. Okay, so this is a loan program that's basically the Federal Housing Administration issued this, and so this allows a borrower to put as little as 3.5% down on a house. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second after I talk about the rest of these loan options. So FHA, 3.5% down. Owner carry financing. Okay. Owner carry financing is a harder one to come by. And this basically means uh, the owner of the house acts as the bank, and you don't have to get a real mortgage until your term with the seller is up. So you may agree with the seller, hey, seller, I'm going to give you $13,000 up front, and I'm going to make payments to you each month directly over a period of time. So they essentially give you the property and you pay them back. They act as the bank. Okay. And then there's things as private financing. So you can, go to a hard money lender, which is a lender that doesn't work for these, big companies, and might lend you $400,000 in cash for a high interest rate. So it's going to be more expensive, a little bit more sketchy. I wouldn't really get into that as a first time home buyer unless you have someone who you can trust and borrow money from. Okay. So if we're looking at a $375,000 duplex, 3.5% down is $13,125. Okay. So that's not that much, raise your hand in here if you thought that was less money than you thought it would take to buy a house. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So it's less than you'd think, but here's the downside. So 3.5%, yes, is not that much money, in the broad scheme of things. The more you put down, basically, the less your monthly payment's going to be. Okay. So we'll get into that once we start analyzing the subject property that we're going to get to. But say, you're looking at 3.5, that's 13,000. There's a lot of investors out there that put 25% down. It's $93,000. Their payment's going to be pretty low. They're going to be, not paying any mortgage premiums and insurance. Um, you know, those are established investors that are usually putting about 25% down. But we can make it work with 3.5. Okay. So is that making sense for a lot of people so far? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're about to get into it and actually analyze a property here. So step number 2 is identify. Um, so there's a few things you need to identify. Number 1, identify your realtor. That's me, guys, hopefully. So yeah, I'm one of those, okay? If you guys didn't know. So I facilitate these transactions. That's the job of a real estate agent. We will facilitate a transaction. So what do? I show you homes, facilitate paperwork, coordinate timelines, negotiate on your behalf, and protect and advise you throughout this whole process. And that's sort of the broad, generic duties of a real estate agent. But me personally, I think I bring a lot more value than just your average real estate agent that brings those 5 things to the table. Um, Especially on the investment side, I'm always finding these properties off market that aren't, listed on Zillow, and finding deals. I think that's where, the majority of my clients succeed is these off market properties that I find in numerous different ways. So a real estate agent is definitely a good key factor to have, when you're looking for your first property. They walk you through a lot of these key steps. So next thing you need to identify is what kind of property you want to buy. Okay. So there's a couple different options. You can go with a single family home. Okay. This is maybe what you grew up in. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. A pretty generic option. And there's pros and cons to each one of these. And I'll talk about those in a little bit. So a townhouse, this is a shared wall home, okay? A home that shares a wall with your neighbor. Single family house is a standalone house that sits on its own property and has a yard and whatnot. Townhouse shares a wall with your neighbor, okay? There's also pros and cons to this. And then there's a duplex or a fourplex, and so on. So these are multi-unit properties. So it could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 15, it could be 25, could be hundreds of units, right? So this is my favorite one of these for an investment, is the multifamily, because you can basically get multiple houses for one big price, and they're often cheaper individually than if you were to buy, 5 of the single family houses. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze a duplex, a recent duplex that I sold. So can everyone see my crazy looking screen right now? Promise it won't be as complicated. Okay.
Yep.
So this is a duplex in Phoenix, Oregon, so not too far away um, from my office here in Ashland. So this property came on last year back in May, and I can see right here that there's 2 units. Number of units total, 2. So this is a duplex. It's about 1,456 square feet total. Okay, not for each unit, but total. So around 728 square feet per unit. Built in 1971. Not crazy old, but definitely a bit older. Okay, so we're going here to look at the photos. Okay, let's go back to the first one. So you can see here it's a pretty generic house, right? You're looking at a rectangle, and there's a door on this side, a door on this side, right? So 1 unit's on this side, and 1 unit's on that side. Pretty standard duplex, okay? So when you guys are looking for your first property, you're probably going to be looking on Zillow, looking at these photos. Okay, so there's some things you should know when looking at this, right? So you got a duplex. It's got 2 garages. That's great. Okay, garages are great. Tenants don't always have garages, right? If you're thinking about renting this out, tenant's gonna love having a garage to put all their stuff in. Okay. Um, so you got 2 garages, 2 units. It looks painted. It looks pretty new on the outside. That's great. You know, paint could be $12,000, right, to paint a house of this size. So paint's great. You know, new paint. You know, inside of a unit, we're looking at the appliances. How new are those? The countertops, the condition of these cabinets. All looks pretty good, you know. Newer paint on the inside, maybe. Carpet looks nice and new, doesn't look torn or worn or anything like that. So yeah, this looks like a pretty good unit. Okay. It's generic, you know, but it's easy to work with, right? 2 bedrooms. There's a bathroom behind here. We'll probably get to that. You know, carpet looks brand new. Here's the bathroom. Okay, so looks a little dated, right? This is like kind of grandma's sink looking. Looks a bit dated for a tenant. You know, they're probably going to want to see something newer. But overall looks pretty good. Okay, so like see, okay, we got this unit. We go down here. We see that unit 2, one of them is rented for $1,435. Okay, that's great. So let's go back to our keynote. Okay, so I broke down the duplex a bit here. So unit A, right? 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 728 square feet. The description said it was rented for 10 years. The same tenant's been in there for 10 years. That's pretty good, right? That tenant's established. They probably want to be there for, who knows, 10 years more. It needs a little bit of updating. They're paying $1,450 a month, or about. They're paying $1,435, rent it up to $1,450 to make good math. Unit B is vacant, the one we looked at. Okay, so that one's 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 728 square feet. It's vacant. You could put another renter in there right now. Okay, based on what your realtor will tell you on how much you could get for rent out of that unit, they're probably going to say about $1,550 a month. You know, it's a bit more updated than the other unit. The other unit shows that, you know, you're getting a consistent amount of rent for a, you know, a unit that needs updating, right? So now we're looking at $1,450 and $1,550 a month for 2 units. Okay. Is everyone following along so far? They got this? Okay, good. So now we're looking at your mortgage. Say you put $5,000 down, you know, $18,750 as your down payment. At your current interest rate, this may vary, you know, depending on your loan, depending on your credit history, depending on your income. Interest rate's going to be 6.7. Okay. So your total payment for your mortgage is going to be $2,517. Okay. So right now that looks pretty great, right? 1,450 plus 1,550 equals 3,000 a month. Okay. Minus your mortgage, you're looking at $592. The stuff we see on TikTok, on Instagram, whatever, it's like, oh, this, you know, this cash flows, this is passive income. Look, like my rent's 3,000, my mortgage is 2,500. Like I'm making almost $600 a month. They do not factor in your utilities, right? If the tenant's not paying their own utilities, you got to pay utilities. And for this instance, the tenant doesn't pay for their utilities. So you're looking at about $550 a month for, you know, electric, gas, you know, sewer, water, garbage, right? All these expenses each month that are really going to cut into your profit. Okay. So that leaves you with about $42 a month in cash flow, which is going to pay for your gym membership, right? Your almost $19,000 down payment, $19,000 investment is going to be making you 42 bucks a month, which, isn't all that great, but it is positive, which is nice. So does how many of you think this is like a good investment? Like 42 bucks a month, by not doing anything. Is this does this seem good to you guys? You can raise your hand if you think it's good or you think it's bad. Okay. All right. So yeah, personally, I'm looking at this like 42 bucks a month. I mean, that's not great. Okay. How can we make this a little bit better? Um, so I want to talk about something that I think Gen Z should definitely know about, and it's called house hacking. How many of you have heard about house hacking? Raise your hand. No, no one knows what house hacking is. Okay, so basically, like software engineers go in there and just hack the computers and the Wi-Fi within the house. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. So, house hacking means you were to live in this house, okay? Not rent out both sides, not think about making money every month, passively, right? Passively. This is for you to live in the house, okay? So this is a better option, I think, in this scenario. So you rent one house out, right? You may rent unit A out, $1,450 a month. You move into unit B, okay? It's 2 bedroom. Get a roommate, right? You're gonna get a roommate for the second unit. He's gonna live with you. She's gonna live with you. Okay. That might be, I might charge them half, right, of what I'm getting for the other unit. Maybe it's $700. So all of a sudden you're getting $700 plus 1450, which is 2150 a month, which is almost paying, you're $400 short of your mortgage. Okay. I think this is a lot better option. You're basically paying, 400 bucks and your utilities, of course, as essentially rent, essentially living there. Okay. Um, so how many of you guys pay rent right now? Like pay rent, like maybe more than 500 bucks, maybe $1,000 in rent. Okay. Okay, cool. So on average, if you're paying $1,000 in rent, right, a year, 10 years, 10 years is $120,000 you're paying to a landlord. Okay. That's just basically throwing money away. If you're paying 400, 500 bucks out of pocket every month to live somewhere, you're paying yourself, right? You're paying to live in a house that's going to make you money over time. It's going to appreciate in value. Once you want to move out of there, you can put a tenant in there. Then all of a sudden, hopefully you're making more than 40 bucks a month, right? Because maybe rent has increased. Maybe you update the unit a bit, make it more, impressive, make it better looking for prospective tenants. They might be paying more, right? So all of a sudden you might be renting one unit for 1,550 and the other one for 1,600, right? Over a couple years. And then all of a sudden now you're cash flowing more like $200, $300 a month, right? Which is now paying for your food and your gym membership. And then it's exponential from there, right? So yeah, basically there's multiple ways to go about this. Some ways are better than others, but I would recommend, at our age to buy a house, rent as much of it out as you can while you're living there. Okay. Cover the majority of your mortgage, be paying a little bit out of pocket while your property is gaining value over time. It's a pretty simple equation. So does that make sense for most people? Yeah, good. So, the boomers are right. Like the boomers are right because they were buying houses for far less and their interest rates, you know, were similar to ours back in the day. But the people that were buying houses 5 years ago were getting interest rates that are a far lot lower than what they're at right now. So you could basically buy any house and rent it out. And you're going to be making a ton of money because your payment is so low with such a low interest rate. So it's harder these days, but you can still make it work. That's why I want to, instill in you guys that you can still make it work, if you're patient. So, um, yeah, that's basically all I got. I wanted to kind of keep it somewhat short. Um, and now I just want to open it up Q&A style. Like if you guys have questions, maybe put them in the chat. Ideally, unmute yourself. Um, thanks, Declan, for being in the chat heavy. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about down payments, about loans, about finding a property? Um, anyone have any questions?
I mean, I feel like I have a ton of questions. I can open up by asking the first one.
Cool.
So Finn, you obviously, first of all, thank you for doing this. I think it's
Mhm.
super cool that you're doing this, and I respect it a lot. I started working for a property management company in January, so this is like a whole new world to me that I'm really trying to like learn.
Mhm.
So this is like perfect timing for me personally.
Okay.
I'm I'm curious. If you buy a property, but you don't necessarily maybe know the ins and outs of how to manage it, because I feel like it does take a lot to like manage a property well, especially if you're having tenants.
Mhm.
Is it good to use like a property management service if you don't want the headache of doing it yourself, or if you're just trying to like maximize your money, should you just like learn it as you go?
Yeah, great question. So, um, in what I'm explaining to you guys in this Zoom is, for your first property, ideally this is going to be somewhere where you want to live. Like if you're wherever you're living at right now, like hopefully you can buy a property where you are because that means that you can be hands-on and you can self-manage your own property. And for people that don't know what Declan does is he works for a property management company, which you buy a house and you rent it out, and you can basically hire a company to manage it for you and manage the tenants and everything, the repairs and everything, and you'd be totally hands off. And this usually costs anywhere from 8 to 12% of your monthly income that you're getting from this property. So yeah, I think that as a first-time investor, if you can self-manage your properties, that's ideal because you're going to be cutting into your profits a lot by paying 10 or 12% of your monthly income to a property management company. Um, so ideally you don't, but if you're going to invest somewhere out of state, like if you guys are in Southern California where property prices are pretty high and it's hard to get your foot in the door, it might be a better idea to invest out of state and then hire a company um, to manage it for you.
Cool, thank you.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions,
I
guys?
have a question.
Kai, what's up?
Yo.
What's
Um,
the question?
so let's say I see a house and I want to buy it and I'm like visiting the property. Are there any common things that I should look for that might decline the value of the property that happened that I might not notice if I'm just walking around?
Yeah, 100%. Um, so the biggest thing, like when you get to the property, you're going to be driving through the neighborhood, right? Like keep your eyes open, right? Like study the neighborhood. What are the other houses looking like? How many cars are in the driveway? What kind of cars are in the driveway? Like who's walking around? Like I got to be careful as a professional talking, about the demographics and whatnot. and neighborhoods and whatnot, and what they look like. But like I think all of you guys probably have a good self-judgment on like what a neighborhood might look like that you would want to live in or rent in or invest in, you know? So just look at the neighbors, Um, if there's tenants in the property that are renting already, like evaluate them. Like what's going on? Like, is there trash all around the property? Is it like, are they not, gardening? Like, are there a bunch of bicycles like and they haven't been on in a long time? Like, there's lots of cues like that that are like visible and on the outside. But yeah, things that you could miss um, could be stuff that you can see online. Like if the house has been for sale for 200 days, right? That might be a property that could be pretty distressed, and there could, be something wrong with it. Um, but I would say, yeah, just use your best judgment when you're walking around the property, um, and evaluate the condition of the general area because that's what you're really investing in.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but like more so as in like the condition of the house. Maybe it's
Mhm.
like an older house,
Yeah.
and when I'm walking around, I might not like notice, like, I don't know, like how well the floors are done or
Sure.
something like that.
Yep.
Something important or like the foundation sucks or
Yes.
something that might like decline the value of the house over time. Like, are there any like common things that happen there?
Yeah. So part of like there's going to be things you can't see, like you're asking about, like foundation in the attic and like the HVAC system, right? Um, Things like that you can't see are always going to be unknown until you inspect the property, right? So a property, there's going to be home inspectors, right? So say you look at the property and from the outside it looks pretty good, all right, but there's obviously unknowns. Once you get your offer accepted, the real estate agent will hire a home inspector to inspect the ins and outs of the whole entire house and create like a 50-page report going over basically everything. So it's at that point when you find out, okay, is the foundation okay? If it's not, you can maybe get out of there as quick as you can, right? Uh, and yeah, so like that's where you're going to find the home inspector is also a very key part um, of the equation, and that's something that I didn't touch on, but that will expose all those unknowns, within a house. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Good question. Thanks, Kai. All right, anybody else?
Then how about getting a new place, like getting bare land and developing on it? Like, say you have a friend who's a developer and they're like, hey, we can do it kind of at a less expensive, because then you have a guaranteed brand new place. Maybe
Sure.
you get the property. What do you think of that route?
I think it's a great route if you can, qualify for that, right? Like if you're able to, borrow money privately and fund a build like that, right? I think that's a great idea. If you manage to get a loan such as like a construction loan from a bank and you build a property, I think that's a great route. It's often a little, I would say it's a little less entry level, like I think once you've established a portfolio of real estate investments and you want to start really narrowing down like what you really want, I think
Yeah.
that's when the development key comes into it, the development piece, and you are able to develop exactly what you want. Um, because I think anyone, not everyone, but a lot of people can buy a bare piece of land and build whatever they want on it. But I think they should be, educated on what a consumer wants and what's going to appreciate and be a good asset, over time. But yeah, if you can afford to do it, I think it's a pretty great option.
So it is more costly because you can't get a typical banks don't give out loans like that to just Joe Schmo. Is that right?
I mean, I can't really touch on that because I'm not a lender. But I know that it's going to be more expensive usually. Interest rate probably going to be a little higher than your normal mortgage for a house. And it's probably going to be a little harder to qualify. You're
Okay.
not going to be putting like, 3.5% down on a piece of land and, borrowing a ton of money. Like it's not a safe, you know, for the mortgage companies to loan for that kind of thing.
Okay.
But again, that's probably a better conversation to have with the lender. They know more about that than I do personally, but yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Mhm. Got a couple in the chat here. Do you hire an inspector before committing? If I can, yes, but oftentimes in a competitive market and most scenarios, you can't inspect a home before you offer on it. So I tell my clients, if you're at all interested in this home and you think it's a good idea, let's offer on it. Okay. Once we get our offer inspected or accepted, then we can go ahead and inspect the property and we'll have a certain amount of days to do so. And with any findings during the inspection, we can negotiate the price down or we can leave, right? And get out of there if it's like really crappy. So every single time I'll do a home inspection. Unless my clients are like crazy and they really want the house, then I might skip that. But for investment properties, always. Best ways to learn the basics. Best ways to learn the basics, books, podcasts, courses. Yeah, guys, a couple really good podcasts, if you're into it, is going to be called Bigger Pockets. Write that down if you guys are podcast guys and gals. Bigger Pockets has a ton of good stuff, especially their older stuff. Go way back 5 years ago. Listen to those podcasts. Super good. They talk about investing, learning, everything like that. Number one book, some of you, let's see, how many of you guys have heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5. Yep. Joe, you heard that? Yes. Okay, cool. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, guys. This is like, I think one of the best books for real estate and finances in general. It's basically an overall generic finance book. But it's a really popular one and it gives some really good ideas. So if you guys haven't read that, it's a really good read. I can barely read, and I read that thing like in a couple days. It was good. Yeah, like, and it doesn't have a lot of pictures either, which is crazy for me. But I read that. It's a good one. Write that down, guys. Rich Dad Poor Dad. See any more questions, guys? Oh, Riley's got one in the chat. You touched on a little bit, but what are lenders' attitudes towards self-employed people? Generically pretty good. I mean, they can't discriminate, right? So they look at a lot of self-employed people, and as long as you've got your 2 years of income as a self-employed person, and you show you're making money, then that's great, just as good as a W-2. A lot of my clients are self-employed, 1099, taxpayers. So self-employed people don't have a hard time getting loans. Hope that answers that. Anything else? Declan?
Yeah, so earlier you touched on if you buy a duplex, there's gonna be utilities expenses associated with it. Can you ask your tenants to cover some utility costs though?
Yes. So some of you guys may be renting right now, right? And you have to cover your own utilities.
Yeah.
So that's just something that is within the lease agreement initially. In this subject duplex that I'm referencing from, the tenant has been there 10 years, and they've never paid their utilities but electricity. So they pay their electricity but nothing else. So, as a landlord, you got to take on that, those expenses. And if you'd like, I'm not totally sure what it's like to tell them that they have to start paying for their utilities. And that might not be a great conversation. You might know more because you're a property manager. But if you establish your lease agreement initially, you can decide who pays for what. Ideally, they pay for their own, but it's not always the case.
And then isn't there something where you can increase the rent more based on how much utilities the tenant already pays for. Isn't there like a percentage? Like if the tenant pays for one utility, then you can raise it by like 3% a year if they pay, that sort of thing.
Mm, again, I
Or
don't
maybe that's a California thing,
that
honestly.
it could be a California thing. Tenants in Oregon are pretty favored. Oregon favors tenants a lot. I'm not sure what the laws are regarding that. And yeah, again, you might know more because you manage the properties. But could be a California thing. I know that, each year there's a certain amount you can, increase in rent. And yeah, sorry, I can't really answer that one. Johnny says, if a townhome has an HOA fee, can you make the tenants pay more because of those extra fees? Yeah, Johnny, like if you haven't had a renter in there, like if you bought a place and you lived in there for a little bit and then you decide to move away and rent it out, you can, supplement the rent based on the HOA, right? Because you look at an HOA fee, it might be $100 a month, and you're like, gosh, like that's going to cut into my rents a little bit. I'm going to advertise my property for $100 more than I usually would just to cover those HOA fees, right? But yeah, that's how it would work if you wanted them to cover that, if that makes sense. Any other questions? Really? Not really, guys?
You got one in the
Oh,
chat.
one in the chat. Thanks, Gabe. How do you find off-market properties, or is that your secret sauce? Oh. Good question. So, yeah, what I do, it's actually right here on my desk. Letters. Okay. So as a real estate agent, I make money off of selling properties. So the more people I can reach and sell to, the more money I make. So this basically these are letters to sellers. And within this letter, it says, "Hey, dear seller, hey Riley, I've got a buyer who wants to buy your property. If you're interested at all in selling it, please, give me a call. We can talk about it and, do this off the market." Okay. So off the market means it's never listed on Zillow. It's never listed publicly on the MLS, the multiple listing service for everyone, the general public to see. So this is totally off market. I bring the buyer to the seller. We do the whole thing off market. And it's pretty seamless for a lot of people, and it's an ideal way to find properties and get them for better prices than what you would find on the open market. Just like anything, if you like know a guy who's selling a car, selling a Tacoma, like it might be a bit cheaper than if you were to buy it off Facebook Marketplace, So yeah, this is what I do in order to find those off market properties, and it's worked quite well. Any more questions? Any more questions? Not a lot of questions. Okay. Does everyone feel like they've learned a little bit from this and yeah, maybe have a better understanding on, what it takes in order to buy a house? Yeah,
Definitely, for sure. For sure, for sure.
sweet. Yeah, so just want to kind of get clear the cloud from it all because it's a pretty, daunting task, but I think if you're educated, it's really not that hard. And yeah, so
I think you got a question in the chat.
question in the chat. Thanks. Declan says, how do you assess risk that isn't local?
Like what I mean is like there's no way I'm gonna be able to buy a duplex, and I live in Santa Monica,
Mhm.
and I was like, looking on Zillow yesterday, and nothing's under $1 million
Yeah.
from Ashland. So like I sort of know that town a little bit, Medford, but like if there's opportunities elsewhere, which there are, how can I possibly assess like the risk of it if I've either never been, or should I just like steer clear of that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're like, I would always try to invest in a place that I have some knowledge about. Like we've grown up in the Rogue Valley, right? So like there's a couple different places around here that could be great investments. So I would try to aim for that. And again, like a real estate agent like myself would be a pretty good option to talk to, right? Like I sit here a lot and just talk to my clients and they ask me like, well, what's that neighborhood like? And what's this town like? Or what do you see over, and I like help them answer it. So I would invest in a place that you have some knowledge about. But if you're just going for something way far away, you got to talk to you either got to research it online, you know, forums and investment forums, or you just talk to an established real estate agent. And doesn't have to be the first one you find online. Like call until you find someone who's like, oh yeah, like, oh, I know about that area. Like I send letters there or whatever, like someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Um, that's that's my recommendation.
Cool, thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. Any other questions, guys, about like how to get a loan or like best loan programs? Um, investments other than duplexes. Um, any questions about those? All right. Maybe maybe that's it, guys. All right. Cool. Well, yeah, if any of you guys want to stick around, ask me questions, maybe you're nervous or something, you're welcome to. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, I appreciate it. And I might do another one, maybe going over like the actual home buying process. Um, if you guys want to learn about that. So yeah, hope you guys learned a bit from it. Thanks for joining.